I mean, I was working out and all this other stuff, and I was reminded of how mentally weak I used to be. And I got stronger, but it's come back, it seems. And I am, to an extent, have been mentally weak for a long time. Always have been. For example, when I was young, I'm still young. For example, I would be riding a bike. At least I believe I was weak mentally. Maybe other people around the same age were as mentally weak as I was, and I was just hanging around older people. But I remember many times be riding the bike with my cousins or something, or they'd force me to ride fucking bikes with them, which I hated that shit. I always wanted to play video games instead. And I'd be going with him, and then you have to ride up a hill. And I would, I don't know if that's the exact scenario, but I would start having like a mental breakdown. Probably is fucking quoted within the family how I used to have mental breakdowns, but and I would start crying and pitching a fit and stuff because I had to like bike up and it was uncomfortable. But I can tell right now I'm worried about not being perceived as intelligent as I want. I was gonna say something to kind of satisfy the desire of what I would classify as ego. I just mentioned ego kind of controlling me to be as intelligent. And I didn't act on it. I can tell I'm actually satisfying the ego slightly right now because for some reason it seems as if I have a perception that other people will perceive what I'm saying at this moment as intelligent. At least to a certain extent, or perceive intelligent at least. But that wasn't actually purposely acting on it, knowing it, so it's okay. I was simply acting naturally. But the earlier urge I had to satisfy that ego to want to seem intelligent, I didn't act on, and it feels good. It always feels bad to act on my ego. Maybe it only feels bad because I have a belief I shouldn't do it, and therefore whenever I do it, I'm like, oh, I did the wrong thing. But if I didn't actually have that belief that I shouldn't act on the ego, then acting on it probably wouldn't feel bad. No, maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. I don't want to stay put in a certain mindset, so if anyone in the comments thinks, oh, you should act on ego for certain reasons or in certain situations, of course maybe you should. But if you believe I'm wrong in this this mindset, then please tell me. I don't think I'll take any offense. Although sometimes maybe I don't know if I'll take offense or not. I would say I probably don't though. And I was gonna talk about, honestly, I was gonna talk about some different stuff, but I'm just gonna fucking yap here. So some of it's gonna be common sense, of course. Okay, that was partially my ego because I'm worried about like, people being like, oh my god, this guy's spitting out common sense or etc. Anyway, I'm not gonna go into that. Didn't really make much sense what I just said there, but I know what I'm trying to say. So it's okay to. I'm going to try to like, be okay with being perceived as wrong or be okay with being perceived as unintelligent. You caring about the perception of other people of you, I would say it's probably something tied to ego or think. I could be classifying something incorrectly. Now I could be using an incorrect term. I believe you guys may understand what I'm saying. If not, ask a question in the comments because, of course, I want to get engagement. On my old YouTube channel, I had 2K subs, but I got taken down the whole YouTube channel because I was talking about certain mental health issues. Certain topics I guess cannot be allowed. I think I came this way. I was gonna make a joke or make a comment that that wasn't necessary at all to say pause. It was kind of a laughing manner, but I made it inside my head and it didn't feel good, and then I didn't do it in real life, and it actually felt good not saying it out loud. It's very likely that some of the stuff I'm saying now is actually not making sense to y'all because I have context and more knowledge of what it meant inside my mind, and then like I'm just kind of like half-ass explaining it, and you guys are like, "What the hell is he talking about?" Now, I would say right now, like I don't feel like this is for ego. This is for something else. If it's for ego, it's not one that makes me feel bad. It has some kind of negative feeling. And some of you guys may be like, why are... I mentioned a few other reasons earlier, but the general reason for why I'm trying to cut out this ego is because I feel as if a lot of my life I care too much about what people think of me. And in strange ways too, because like sometimes... No, sadness because it's music, maybe nostalgia. Maybe nostalgia though, I deeply. And reframe that part of my mind. But anyway, the reason I try to, so I care too much about what people think of me. And you know, obviously that's because you don't want to be perceived in some kind of negative way or something. You don't want to be perceived in some kind of way from people. I believe that is tied into the ego. I think it is, probably. It could be misclassifying, but in other words, and because of that, I want to try to cut out the ego so that I don't care as much, right? And, or at least not act on the ego. So I can do stuff without worrying about what other people think, or I just ignore it and I do shit what I do stuff and just have fun without worrying about it, you know, and be free. Many problems besides that, but having many problems is not an excuse to not conquer one. Of saying, wait, so basically, because I want to try to remove ego, as I've established now, to stop caring about what people think of me, and you know, do what I want to do without being worried about being perceived in a certain way, cringe, etc. You know, I think many people face this problem. Some more aware, some less aware. Many extra things I could say, but I can't tell if it's tied to ego or not, and I'm trying to stay in more of a straight line of thought, which of course that could be tied to ego as well. That's all. But it's not purely tied to ego, so I think it's okay. I don't know. There's no pure. I don't know, guys. I'm thinking too many things. Or no, maybe I'm not. I don't know. I'm not gonna worry about it. But anyway, because I want to remove ego. Every time I have some kind of urge to do something, some kind of action, you know, whether that's a thought, etc. And I can tell that it's based on ego, or at least I think it's based on ego, I'm trying not to act on it, because over time those connections to ego will slowly die. That's simply how the brain works, as far as I'm aware, you know? It's like every little action creates new connections, or it creates a lack of connections, or whatever, etc. Generally along those lines, you know? So the more you ignore urge and stop acting on it, I would say oftentimes it kind of weakens that connection within the mind. Or maybe it builds connections to go against that. I don't know the exact way the brain works. And technically, maybe that word I just had could be tied. I've had thoughts that or ideas that maybe I shouldn't in some cases follow the ego, and I was an AP Psych right now. God, you know what's crazy? I just had like an actual, the old me would have, no, probably wouldn't have, but I almost wanted to, I had the slight urge I could feel somewhere inside, I think, that I was going to say something along the lines of, because I was about to mention I was an AP Psych, and then I was about to mention, but most of this stuff I knew, you know, like I wasn't made aware of this stuff because of AP Psych. In other words, trying to say, oh, I've always been this knowledgeable and intelligent on these subjects within the mind, and no one taught it to me. Something along those lines, and maybe slightly exaggerating, or I don't know exactly what I would have said, because I have more of a general idea of what I would have said, not the exact words, of course. Anyway, so I'm in AP Psych right now. But, you know, I was asking my teacher, or talking to my teacher about ego, and telling him about my reasons for what I do, etc. And I was like, well, maybe I should actually act on ego sometimes, because it could actually lead to me getting in certain groups of people, or social circles, or, you know, and getting around people that are more like-minded to myself. Especially important in this, at my age. And he was like, well, you know, ego, it's like trying to not care about what other people think of you at all, and trying to, like, you know, like, you guys, it's a human thing to want to fit in. It's like, it's very hard or almost impossible to remove that. It's like, when I was telling him, well, I don't want, you know, maybe I want to evolve past what being a human is. Is that what I told them? Like, I don't necessarily want to just be what a human is. Like, you know, I want to evolve past this. Just in some ways, I think about it, maybe I feel almost scared or empty. But that's only from my very narrow human perspective. I feel as if it would maybe make me feel empty or etc. Some kind of negative thing now. I have a more wide perspective. You know, in other words, evolve consciousness, if that's even the right thing. I may not feel the same way towards the exact same things because I just simply will perceive everything in a very different way. I don't know. I feel like part of me, maybe without ego, I may become empty. That is only from the perspective of I don't know, guys. I'm trying to stay on train of thought. And if I talk about really abstract concepts that I haven't gone into yet, and I don't know if it's abstract's the right word, but if I talk about more somewhat complicated things, I think I said somewhat. That was for ego as well, bro. I said somewhat to make myself seem as, oh, this stuff's actually pretty easy for me to think about. It's actually not. It's pretty easy for me to conceive. Of course. I say this and then fucking play video games and jack off. But another note. I don't even. Okay, we're not gonna go into that. I crave connection. I think sometimes, maybe. Sometimes I crave being away from people, but I think in some ways I'm empty and or lonely. I don't know which one of the two it is, or maybe it's both or something like that. I don't know. I'm not gonna worry about knowing right now. I kind of want to know. Yeah, I don't know if I'm taking the wrong approach right now. But maybe not being wrong here is gonna kill me. So I can be wrong for a little while and just explore that, whatever that is, and I'll see if it's wrong. Fuck! But I'm talking about audience, and then the reality is, I would feel, even if I needed this audience that I'm talking about, referring to, trying to get in real life, I would feel no true connection to them, or it's very unlikely I would. Because I never feel connection to people generally. It's funny, right now when I started singing, I could tell I wanted to start singing a bit better because to sound better to the audience. But that is tied into ego as well, wanting to seem better, wanting to sound better. It needs to be for yourself, not for others. Of course, you maybe argue, well, actually for yourself but for yourself, it needs to be for yourself. Like technically, obviously, you know, wanting to be perceived better by others is in a sense, you know, evolutionarily for yourself. But I mean for yourself as in not worried about the perspectives of other people at all. It's a goal. That is the complete goal. However, would you become lonely in doing that? Because here's the thing. Okay. If you wanted to not care about the perspectives of other people at all, would that mean that, because the thing is, you're not gonna, you know, in theory you shouldn't try to make jokes, because I think, at least for me, a lot of times jokes are kind of performative, and I'm very good at them oftentimes if I want to be. So would the goal also be to stop making jokes and having laughter with others, because in a sense your jokes to fit in with other people? Or maybe I have a false perception of what jokes are, and my approach to them is different. And I've been trying to do this. I'm trying to now make jokes that I find funny, not that make others laugh. I don't actually find funny, but assuming that my approach to jokes is the common approach to what like humor is, to where it's almost performative. Then I would stop making laughter and maybe in some senses be more lonely. Thing is, then but then if you try to become less lonely by having laughter and making jokes with people, brain is kind of paying, whether you realize it or not, paying attention to how they perceive you, and you're making adjustments in your humor based off of that. Generally, I think I'm not exactly getting this across right, but the general idea might be there, and then it would counteract your effort to kill your ego, because this entire time whenever you feel, or you pay very close attention to your urges inside of your mind, and whenever there's an urge to act that relates to ego, to satisfy it, etc. Well, yeah, it would just be to satisfy it. Well, there could be slight differences, but yeah, whenever there's an urge in relation to ego, you don't act on it, but then and that becomes your normal, but then you participate in humor, which in a sense does have ego tied into it, using my approach of humor, at least the bad one probably. Then you are starting to rewire those connections in relation that have, you know, are to do with ego you're kind of counteracting it. However, of course, maybe you can have ego in one part of your life, but not another. But I think generally it's a very I think it kind of takes place overall, different parts of your brain. And if you don't have, and it would take very, very strong control and awareness to only have it in one but not another. And I find it it's hard to dive back and forth between different parts. Maybe it's not. I don't know, guys. So much of my life has been performative that I've warped my actions, I've warped my personality to others. And so now there's no identity of my own. Maybe there is, but it's all for others. And because of when you warp your life for others, and you warp yourself fit another person, water warps to fit a container. You don't actually create a life for yourself, you simply create a life that's performative for other people. And when you do that again, you fail to warp life for you. You fail to make choices for yourself, and you fail to find what you want to do. Of course, you know, there's not completely true. Maybe, you know, obviously, I'm not saying this is some kind of black or white thing. Yeah, it's just gray here. But I think that's the general idea. But guys, stop trying to be performative. You actually not realize you're doing it, because at a certain point it becomes such a norm inside your mind that there is no effort anymore. It was developed probably when you were young, maybe, I don't know. And it becomes again the norm, and you don't do things for yourself. You don't make jokes because you find them funny. You make jokes because simply for others. Maybe it's actually not for the ego. Maybe some of the things I'm doing is, but no, it's still worried about other people's perceptions. I think that's tied into the ego, but it's not necessarily that jokes. I don't know. But I think, in other words, I'm trying to kill off my ego so I can be less performative. And it seems to be, in some ways, working, maybe? But I'm still empty. And emptiness hurts less. Maybe because say stuff, but I'm going to let it marinate inside my head for longer. And I feel more at peace the way I'm at right now. Truly. Truly I do. I often have doubts about things, but right now when I feel empty, more peace than there was before, I think. Hey guys, we're like basically at the end of the video. I'm probably just gonna end it off here. I talk a little bit more about heroin and some stuff, but like, I'm probably gonna end it off here. If you guys want to get the portion where I was talking about heroin, I can either just like post it later, or I'll just like talk about it in the future. Like, anyway, yeah. Yeah. Thanks for watching.